Hi, everybody.
Hi there. Cool.
My name is Kenneth. You see him pronouns. I am the curator and host of this here poetry reading series, Poetry at the Point. So welcome to our May reading. We're going to bring you the poetry of Alice Azure. Pronounced it right that time, didn't I? Azure. AJ Ward and Andrea Carter Brown. Welcome to all of you. Before we get started, some of the usual announcements. As you know, cases are on the rise. As far as COVID is concerned, we are doing our best to stay live and in person. That means always figuring out if we're going to do it in person or back on the interwebs. I'm excited that we are doing this both in person and also live streaming it. So welcome to those of us who are joining us through Al Gore's internet. Thank you for being here this evening, whether in person or digital. Thanks for staying masked. It is a requirement for these readings so that we keep everybody safe, so we appreciate you doing that. The usual shout outs too to you, our supporters, for sure. Thanks for showing up. And to our members, especially if you are not a member, you can do that. It is not wildly expensive, and every dollar matters to a small organization like ours. So stlouispoetrycenter.org to support us. Thanks to the Missouri Arts Council, whose funding always supports what we do. And thank you to the Focal Point for hosting us and for keeping the lights on for us. They are just a lovely, wonderful, intimate venue, and we love being here in Maplewood. Housekeeping, so bathrooms, if you need to use the restroom, go out this door and hang a left, and they are on the right. There are some that are gendered, some that are all-inclusive, so check those out. If you decide that you want to take a break and get a beverage, adult or otherwise, if you go into Casa Maya and order a drink, you're welcome to bring it in here during the reading. Just make sure you're a responsible adult and that you take it back when you're done, okay? Andrea, I know, has books for sale. Am I mistaken about that?
No.
Okay, awesome. And AJ was talking some smack about maybe even having some music to give away, which is pretty amazing. So I will let AJ speak to that when AJ reads. But definitely engage with these poets before you go, and musicians, in order to take some work home with you. If you're watching this in real time on Facebook Live, please comment, share the link, post some questions though, because if we have time at the end, we're going to have some questions and answers with these lovely poets up on stage, moderated by yours truly, and I would love to take those questions into account. So Aaron is going to keep an eye on that and text me some questions as they come up. Also, live here in person, if y'all think of things that you want to hear more about from those poets, jot that down or file that away in the back of your mind, and let's bring it up again if we have time for that conversation. If you are viewing this video online and it's after May 24th, we're still glad you're here. We still want you to comment and share so that we can continue to build support for the series and for these poets as well. Okay. Any big announcements that I missed, Aaron? I don't think I even asked you before I came up here if there were any other major announcements. Aaron's giving me thumbs up and dismissive hands, and so we're going to keep going. So our first reader this evening is AJ Ward, a baker and writer living in St. Louis, Missouri. I love that introductory sentence. His work especially delights in the relationships between people and place. He's released several albums of songs, has poems and a few publications, and would love to know about the weird foods that only exist in your hometown. I neglected to say anything about the Goo Goo Cluster, but we're going to have to talk about that. Imagine like a praline only made out of caramel and peanuts dipped in chocolate, and it includes marshmallows. How can you go wrong? AJ Ward, please. Hey everyone.
It has been a long time since I've gotten to perform anything for anyone, as I'm sure is the case for a lot of us. So I'm very, very happy and very lucky to be here. This poem is called Beneath What Star to Plow. There was a time at the beginning of 2020 when, in an attempt to bring some joy into everyone's lives in the weird early lockdown days, was a trend where people were putting all of their holiday decorations out in their front yards at one time. So you would see Christmas lights and blow up Easter bunny and like a blow up spider all in the same yard. And that's one of the places that this poem resides in. The park peopling with broken routines, mansards splash with starlings. I watch the first round of a yoga video from the couch. It's almost never now or never. Samaras and magnolia blooms clutter the carport roofs, and lawns parade reindeer, spiders, pastel eggs. There's no rest in the slowness. With all the old knots looping, the pixels peeling from our cheeks, all of the grotesque guesswork of need. The river chambered and channelized, bustling barge habitat. I am dry and righteous on the boat ramp saying, "Nah, come on, I know the current's strong, but the water looks fine." With God and the vultures circling, graceful, patiently, public radio lifts America's favorite chorus. We should be having these conversations. Something kissing concentric circles in the surface. Glasses pulsing with fog, bartering, you first. All of my pillows still smell like you. I'll wake up tomorrow with nothing to do but crawl down from the window I watch myself from into the blowing branches of my body is also a forest, inconceivable life, crawling darkness. When have I ever been more than moonlight pooled in a wilderness that I have never trusted? April came with wood stove smoke and October's gray, but every tree on the Utah Boulevard had gone green. Maybe today only feels the same. This poem is called Four Dudes in a Truck. Something tender about four dudes riding in a truck together. Hard hats nearly touching in the empty middle seat. Between two men being taken somewhere by another man who is taking them. And they are permitted to watch the highway scroll, watch the corn tassels flutter, remember the morning's Wheaties. Close enough to touch one another, unable to fidget the radio, to spray wiper fluid, another man steering their scrunched bodies, knees against the seat back, heads against the window, mouths against the silence, knuckles against the soft seat, against desire. Text message to Allison on date of discharge. When every spoonful of soup was needled, blood on the honeycomb tile, the IV canopies, the inspo mantras you expoed on your mirror, the carts that led the horses to the creek. And did the truth snap like a banner unraveled, all of the hard days cut to confetti on your shoes? Awake with all of the rains, the plows could not persuade, the hospital room's sterile, polite blues. What am I to do as I go loping back into this slow body? The same realizations again and again. Everything that will die between each step. All of the blood that we will lose before we believe it. few months ago, I stayed in a really small town along the Missouri River called Lupus, Missouri. There's, I think the population is 32. It's maybe 100 yards from the Missouri, and so I got to sit by it a lot and walk along some train tracks and look at birds for a weekend. And there was, outside of a very, very small and I think empty museum there, a note about the indigenous people that lived there and a spirit that they had a painting for and a word for. And so that is what a lot of this poem is about. It's called In Domestic Oxbow. Yard of Fisher-Price kitchen, smoker stillness stuck shut, lawn-locked cars, their jaws open to the clouds, snow on their rusting organs. A house smearing, flaking, slouching on flood stilts, spangled in browns and yellows. We were going to use this every day. Everything was always going to feel new. It was going to be different here. But a Basque sculptor said the work is not complete until the weather has finished it. My dream of the future is a commercial for the future, for whole grain cereal, for a smart thermostat hovering off screen while I smile in birthday candlelight, surrounded by beaming strangers. The junco you can speak is not the eternal junco foraging your muddy snow prints in the bank where you kneel to touch the water rushing past. In the oxbow of your cupped hands, the river stilled, like when you love so fretfully that you live gulfless, mouthless, how the dream home doesn't dream you back, how the garden in the poem is not the garden in your hands, how the river is not a key, no matter how they have cut it. On a stone above the Missouri River, the Algonquins painted a creature, a spiriting. The French found it and spelled it Monato. William Clark found that and spelled it D-E-A-V-L, misspelling devil, but spelling a destiny, and then the Union Pacific blew up the stone. And maybe this is why dancing feels like singing your father's secret, feels like your voice played back to you for the first time. Why desire draws our breath through a plastic straw, why laughter, the longer that it rushes, feels like running faster and faster across the railroad bridge, every step a chance to fall through. The toads all groan in the thaw. Geese shriek northward to campus ponds. Cardinals sing their language of approach as the first ghosts of winter pass you downstream. We are the obstinate membrane of God. The joy I dream of is the joy in a Roomba commercial. Soft light, granite countertop, tidy still life, domestic oxbow. Aliveness is a betrayal and feels like one. We are a song we choreograph 3 steps behind ourselves. The river, the movement, is listening, nodding, saying again. Cool. I have one more if I'm good on time. Awesome. I learned that in bee lore, there is a custom, a very old custom, and I don't know how popular it was, where beekeepers, knowing that their bees are very nosy and gossipy, and wanted to be kept abreast of all goings on in the beekeeper's life, would, after a wedding or a birth or a funeral, take some of whatever sweet had been made for the occurrence and take it for the bees so that they knew what was going on. And this poem is called Cake for the Bees. Under champion trees in Bellefontaine, suddenly saw the weight was a clenching. My laughter slacked rope through fists, as close as I could get. The gods blink. Bur oak rust, the ginkgo leaves, slow tambourine, your footsteps. We are somehow here. It is somehow today, wandering strangers' graves before our shifts. Your eyes, outcrops, I am still learning. Unconformities I cannot outwit. Our Dopplers swirl, the sands float, cypress needles in salon floor heaps. Heard it before we saw the swarm and froze in the roar of a real thing. The scarry dough of our bellies, every star we cannot yet see, our useless grip. And my stomach flips when I hear you laugh. All this coming back, honey in your teeth. We are somehow here to tend and tang and leave a little cake for the bees. Thanks.
Thank you very much, AJ. Our second reader this evening is Alice Azure. Her recent work has appeared in Dawnland Voices 2.0, Yellow Medicine Review, and the St. Louis Anthology. She is the author of 5 books, the most recent a volume of poetry, Hunger Feast, released in December of 2017. Her chapbook, Warren Cities, was selected as Poetry Chapbook of 2015 by Wordcraft Circle of Native Writers and Storytellers. She lives in the St. Louis area and is a member of the St. Louis Poetry Center. What a coincidence. Along with many other Mi'kmaq artists, humanists, educators, lawyers, and writers, some of her work has been archived at the website Tepekatuik. She gave me this, so I'm gonna ask her to pronounce it correctly when she gets up here. More at mi'kmaqarchives.ca. Apologies for the mispronunciations. Please give a round of applause to Alice Azure.
Thank you all for coming out. It's always nice to see folks come out on an evening to listen to poetry, and even better, perhaps to understand the words. And I'd like to begin my reading with a very short poem that was composed in the back seat of a car on my way to our monthly SOS meeting, and I didn't have a poem ready. And since I wasn't driving, these words came to me, and it's sort of short. This month of April, being a poet but not composing, reading you poems of love, politics, and silliness, sending you daily verses during National Poetry Month from Elizabeth Barrett Browning, Mary Oliver, Stanley Kunitz, and Joy Harjo, seeing you so uneasy about all these words, knowing that's okay, you're easy with me. I'm the poet you're going to marry. My next group of poems have to do with a situation that we poets of Native American descent have discovered about the audiences to which we read. And in the Q&A session, so many listeners zero in on the poverty, the crime, all of the negative stuff about Native American reservations. So I want to read you some poems tonight that portray the positive experiences I know of reservation life. One poem in 6 parts. Cells to Circles. My granddaughter and I had a conversation one day. If reservations are so bad, she asked, why don't Indians move away? Surprised and stunned in one full swoop, I began to take a defensive position. They do, I said, 2/3 move away. Tables, bar graphs, and figures started to assemble, depicting dreadful statistics behind in and out reservation migrations. But a cleaning crew emerged in my head until all my relations from Indian country began to push at the corners of my mind, making circles of spreadsheet cells. Let me tell you some reservation stories, I said. Snow angels. Recently widowed, her heart undependable, Ethelbert asked Darlene and me to drive her to Red Lake, Minnesota for her mother Pickle's 100th birthday. All Ethelbert's relatives gathered at Sister Tickle's home. Jocko and Sue from Park Rapids, Hula and Tip, nearby neighbors, Goosey and Pretty from further away. Lots of good-natured teasing went on as I struggled to remember their playful names for each other. Snow surprised us that evening, flakes flying so thick and lively that we couldn't resist the invitation from Doak, Ethelbert's nephew, to have an old-fashioned snowball fight. I threw a few at Darlene, but I couldn't resist flopping into the deepening snow, sweeping my arms in frosty arcs, happy to be around middle-aged snow angels skylarking in winter. Choke cherry sweetness. I used to tag along with Darlene to Sisseton, South Dakota, where eagles perched on fence posts in the reservation's Coteau Hills. In her mother Caroline's house, visitors and family sat around the 2-leaf dining table where I first tasted rojapi, choke cherry sauce. Its deep red, gritty tartness sweetened by Caroline calling me my girl. Knife woman. We We traveled many miles together, she and I, while she told me family stories. I used to wonder why she was given the name of Knife Woman, Isanwina, for she was motherless when placed in the Tekawitha orphanage. When her aunt and uncle adopted her into their Sisseton home, did their name for her suggest some prescience of the woman she'd become? Despite the comfort of that first nest, after her family refused to accept a local suitor, she relocated west to California, reorganized her life anew, marrying a sailor named Paul, whose steadfast love supported her resolve to find 13 other siblings spread from Sisseton to Seattle. She claimed each of them, as well as the restless woman who birthed them all. She tells a story about snowstorms, how she ignored her husband's pleas to stay inside, surreptitiously backing her car out of the garage to go adventuring, knifing through unplowed country roads. As a young athletic woman, she danced in feathers, donning a man's fancy dance regalia. I can only imagine what skill and stamina she displayed to cause bustles, feathered roach, and dancing sticks to move at one with the drum. I always said she was like an old-time Dakota scout, never lost in oceans of ripening corn or snowy plains melding into sky, never lost about what most important in life. Her naming was a blessing, a fervent prayer and hope for personal strength, a confidence in herself, an ability to relate to many people like an old-time beloved woman, Isanwina. Turtle Mountain Music Man. When he cradles that harmonica in his cupped hands, breath drawing in, flowing out the sweet notes of St. Paul's walls, or when his bow deftly slides upon the fiddle strings worked by callous fingers, calling up Chippewa jigs that compelled people to tap their toes, then you know, however far away he traveled, Turtle Mountain Reservation never left his heart. Compass people. During the years I lived in Washington, D.C., my friends left town at unpredictable times of the year. Karen and Richard to Cattaraugus, Mary to Pine Ridge, Mitchell to Onondaga, Elizabeth to Pawhuska, others to Window Rock, Cherokee, or Baraga. Ceremonies, birthdays, funerals, Christian or tribal holy days, maybe even loneliness, call them to their homes, that anchored center of their souls, their feet, the roaming compass part of their lives. I have the unique privilege of caring for several feral cats, so it's no wonder that I often write about them. Here are a few. Crying for a cat. Have you seen a long gray and white feral cat? I asked my neighbors. Yes, one answers, in the sewer along where I take my walk. He describes the road he walks along. I go looking, calling in my high-pitched mama voice, here, kitty, 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 here, kitty, kitty, kitty. He never comes, that timid, beloved cat. I wonder how a cat that large can get into that sewer with its iron slotted cover. Another neighbor says, not a sewer, a culvert, and directs me to where some of those big holes are located in the neighborhood. I find one at a busy intersection close to my house. I park my car, lay down some kibbles on the concrete lip leading into dry tunnels. Here, kitty, 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 I cry. People watch me through slotted blinds. Some promise to be on the lookout after I explain my strange actions. He never comes out of there where people say he lives. But another feral ward of mine has found a different culvert a few blocks away. She comes out, follows me home after I go through the familiar ritual of placing kibbles down, crying out my kitty plea. The wild visitor. A little wild girl with eyes of emerald pools slips into my house, lets me hold her for a while on my couch. Suddenly, she turns ballistic. Was it the walls of my domesticity, the presence of indoor cats, the disappearance of escape routes? She flies across cluttered surfaces, crashes framed glass photos, scatters sweetgrass baskets. Her vertical leap of 6 feet or more smashes her body into the sliding glass door. Crazy now myself, it's clear she was meant for openness, to range with the wind, chase leaves of sheltering trees. I dash to the patio door, shove it open. Charging out, she disappears into the familiar night. Will I ever feel her furry body around my legs again? For a feral cat. She curled around my ankles. I disregarded wildness, recoiled when gouged, a smug cat glared. My next and last poem is a villanelle about water keepers. These are women who live in the St. Louis area and who walk along our Mississippi River on many Sunday mornings. Water keepers. Grandmothers walk roadways by rivers and lakes. Their copper buckets hold water, both clean and vile. Prayers spill out healing for our planet's sake. Stop the fracking. Stop tapping water with hardly a break. Care for our land. She will love you back after a while. Grandmothers walk roadways by rivers and lakes. I collect waste from cat bowls and glasses, undertake treks from dawn to dusk, filling my old garden pail. Prayers spill out healing for our planet's sake. such pitiful conserving. What difference does this make when oceans, fens, and aquifers are defiled? Grandmothers walk miles of roadways by rivers and lakes. They cherish Itasca Lake, the Ohio's a heartache. Their prayers celebrate waters from Mississippi to the Nile. Prayers spell out healing for our planet's sake. I'll never swim the Connecticut again, but I won't forsake savings of small water amounts in keeping with lifestyles of grandmothers walking roadways by rivers and lakes, their prayers spilling out healing for our planet's sake. That's it, thank you.
Hey, you're just in time. Thank you very much, Alice. That was lovely. Our final reader for the evening is Andrea Carter Brown, the author of September 12th from the Word Works, The Disheveled Bed from Kevin Carey. Did I pronounce that correctly? Press. Always questioning my own pronunciation these days. And 2 chapbooks, Domestic Karma from Finishing Line Press and Brook and Rainbow, the winner of the 2000 Sow's Ear Press Chapbook Award. Her poems have won the 5 Points James Dickey Prize, the River Styx International Poetry Prize, and the PSA Gustav Davidson Memorial Prize, among many others. Since 2017, she has been series editor of the WordWorks Washington Prize. September 12th, she just told me in the last day or two, so I assume you recently found this out, was just awarded the 2022 IPPY Silver Medal in Poetry for the Independent Publishers Group. So the awards keep coming. Andrea, please.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
I'm just gonna move this a little bit. Wait, this way I can see you, and hopefully you can hear me. Thank you, Erin and Kenneth, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to read with AJ and Alice. It's a pleasure to read in St. Louis. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm going to start with the last poem I wrote before 9/11. New York City is also a river town. Our river is the Hudson River. It has many similarities to the Mississippi, including some of the imagery in this poem. I dedicate this poem to the secret baseball fans in the audience. The Scissor Gate, September 6, 2001. The night was mild, clear. Beyond right field, Manhattan nestled on the horizon like coals. Though the Staten Island Yankees lost badly to the Jamestown Jammers, we didn't mind. There was still the ferry ride home. Beyond the Scissor Gate, pulled across the prow, the skyscrapers beckoned like a ribbon of stars that grew as we approached, dark bands of sky and water, shrinking as the tiny buildings grew ever taller until they loomed above us, suddenly solid, but shot through with white light. the ethereal become all too real, scaffolding on another world. By the time the ferry eased into its berth, we longed to put our feet on solid earth. On the morning of 9/11, I lived in an apartment complex a block as the crow flies from the World Trade Center. And the title poem of this book tells the story of my, what I call, adventures from the morning of 9/11 until we returned to our apartment 4 days later. I'm going to read a short section from the beginning of that sequence and a short sequence from the beginning, from the middle of it. Tuesday morning, September 11th, I am reading the paper. The phone rings, my sister in North Carolina. Are you okay? Sure. Pause. Why? On Good Morning America, I just saw a plane fly into the World Trade Center. Didn't you hear anything? I walked to the far corner of the living room. The North Tower is so close. I must raise the sash and stick my head out to see the top. Dark rivers of smoke pour through windows, licked by flames. A thick gray tornado snout rises from the roof. That tower will fall. I couldn't be more sure. I have to flee. Don't worry, Angel says. Everything will be okay. It's a doorman's job to reassure. But I know he is wrong. How could two such tall buildings on fire within not come down? For now, standing outside the building lobby in the courtyard, I can see both towers, can see thick black smoke, orange and red flames, can hear explosions, the steel groaning as it softens and sways, the crackle glass makes, shattering. A man hurls an office chair repeatedly against a window on a high floor. At another glass already gone, two women perch side by side on the narrow sill, hold hands, pause a moment, jump. To flee the way most people fled, I would have had to go close to the towers. So I headed south and ended up, after taking the Staten Island ferry, which some of you may have taken, on Staten Island where I didn't know a soul. So I'm going to read a short section from the beginning of my time there. 3 strangers in their 20s approach and offer help. They bring me to the 120th Precinct Police Station. When the cop in uniform hears, "She lived there," he opens his arms and gathers me to his chest. One by one, other survivors arrive. The secretary who crawled under a bush in Trinity Cemetery because she couldn't breathe. The boy on a field trip, separated from his 5th grade class. A pair of backpackers from Australia. The frantic woman wearing a satin kimono and fluffy pink mules. Ordered to flee as she was taking a shower in her hotel, she lost track of her husband running down Wall Street. The supervisor from the phone company. I ordered my repair crew into the South Tower minutes before it fell. The woman mumbles to herself from the back. She looks ancient. Neat braids coiled around her head are powdery white, as are her neck, arms, hands, her face, but not the small square on her forearm, which she rubs obsessively, revealing a patch of ebony. Queens, she answers. When asked where she lives, no relatives up north. Yes, I am all alone. She doesn't want help, doesn't need help. She insists, all the while trying to remove the gritty, pale ash from her arm, brushing at it, flicking, rubbing, then digging at it until blood comes. I ordered my repair crew into the South Tower. I grew up in a small suburban town west of New York City, which sent many residents to work in the Wall Street area. And when I learned 11 members of this, a very small town, had died that morning, I realized that if I still lived there, I probably would have known all of them. And so the central section of this book is a portrait of that town and those victims. And I'm going to read the title poem of the section, which is a phrase taken from the alma mater of the town high school, which, believe it or not, I can still sing to myself, but I'll do you a favor and not sing it now. This poem is an homage to Whitman. The title is The Rock in the Glen. I should say the name of the town is Glen Rock, New Jersey. The Rock in the Glen. Picture a pretty town, peaceful, stately trees lining its streets, children walking to school weekday mornings. Picture cars, bikes, and pedestrians converging on the two train stations at the same time. The hurried goodbyes. Picture a quietness after the commuters leave. The pretty town, like sleepy beauty, waiting to be kissed awake when they return. Picture the spill of play, parties, and gossip across yards without hedges or fences. Picture a breeze rustling the oaks and maples, spreading the news the morning of September 11. Picture a pretty town brought to its knees. The portraits of the 11 victims who died from that town were inspired by a St. Louis poet, now deceased, Mona Van Dyne, who invented what she called the half sonnet, and these poems were all in half sonnets. So many people died. Many people's lives were completely disrupted. And for us, not knowing anyone personally who died, the biggest loss to us was the destruction of our neighborhood. So we've all seen pictures of war zones and natural disasters where everything nearby to one's life is gone. And so the first poem I wrote months after 9/11 was a portrait of what I remembered of that neighborhood. And before I wrote the poem, I spent days and nights remembering in vivid detail all of the routines of that life, and this poem chronicles them. The old neighborhood. Where is the man who sold the best jelly donuts and coffee? You sipped, raising a blue Acropolis to your lips. The twin brothers who arrived in time for lunch hour with hot and cold heroes, where liberty dead ends at the Hudson. The courteous, small-boned Egyptian in white robe and crocheted skullcap in the parking lot behind the Greek Orthodox shrine, whose bananas and dates you could always count on. How about the tall, slim, dark brown man with dreadlocks cascading to his waist, who grilled Hebrew national franks to perfection and knew just the right amount of mustard each Knish wanted? The cinnamon-skinned woman for whose roti people lined up halfway down church. The falafel cousins who remembered how much hot pepper you preferred. Don't forget the farmers who schlepped up from Cape May twice each week at dawn to bring us whatever was in season at its peak last August, blueberries and white peaches. What about the lanky fellow who sold green and red and yellow bears and fish and snakes in plastic sandwich bags with twist ties? His friend a block away who scooped still warm nuts from a copper cauldron into palm-sized wax paper sacks he twisted at the corners to close. The couple outside the post office with their neatly laid out golden books. The shy Senegalese with briefcases of watches, except in December when they sold Christmas trees. The Mr. Softy who parked every evening rush hour by the cemetery to revive the homeward hurrying crowd. I know none of their names, but I can see their faces clear as I still see everything from that day as I ride away from the place we once shared. Where are they now? And how? So I'm going to read one more poem, which is a sort of fast forward to 2014. It actually is situated in Cape May, which I referred to in the last poem. If you don't know, Cape May is the southernmost tip of New Jersey. And I wanted to read it because yesterday we went up to the place where the Missouri joins the Mississippi. And not only was it a breathtaking experience to observe that, but we saw a bird that we had never seen before. The dickcissel, a bird common to the Midwest, but since I've only lived in New York and Los Angeles, where I live now, I never had occasion to see it, so it was a great gift. Learning to write. 6 months I couldn't write, words lost their connection to the world, meaning seemed impossible, a futile gesture. But it's hard to live without faith, faith that language can bridge our differences. Once I saw 3 species of warblers share a single oak willow. Blackburnian, flame-throated, flitted about the sun-licked top. Chestnut-sided in the shade at the bottom, and the bay-breasted within the canopy, the tree offering a feast to exhausted migrants. Edward Hicks painted the peaceable kingdom over 60 times, as if art could make it so. If lions can lie down with lambs, and serpents lead a child to safety, why can't we live and let live without killing each other? But they don't. Neither can we. In May, I come upon a plump yellow warbler perched at eye level on a nest at the edge of a field. No cup, this nest is more of a stovepipe, an upside-down top hat. 4 times this spring, to judge from its height, a brown-headed cowbird laid an egg on the yellow warbler's nest, hoping the smaller bird will raise the gigantic chick as her own. 4 times so far, the warbler added a new story on top of the old, abandoning one clutch to lay another. 4 times already, she's accepted what she can't change and moved on. Accept what is and move on, just as birds the world over do and have done for millions of years, along coasts, across oceans, up and down rivers, the Mississippi, the Delaware, my beloved Hudson, the Nile, Tigris, Euphrates, from one hemisphere to the other and back. Birds have found their way. Consider that bird sitting on that skyscraper of a nest, her yellow breast bright as sunlight, her gaze unwavering, unflinching. Imagine everything she has done to get here. Perhaps we too can find our way. Thank you.
Need some more yellows back on those steps. Well, folks, that is our reading for the evening. Big thanks to Alice, to AJ, to Andrea. Thanks to all of you for showing up this evening. Our next reading is going to be on June 28th, and it will be with Daniel Bigelson, Jet McDonald, and a third reader who I'm still trying to confirm at the moment, so stay tuned. And follow us on Facebook. That's the easiest way to make sure that you see that event when it pops up. So unless I'm forgetting anything, I always want to thank Aaron Quick for turning all of the internet gears and for doing all of the heavy lifting for this reading series. Thank you to Aaron. Stick around, take the time to be in community. Sometimes we never know from month to month how this pandemic is going to kick us in the face. So make sure and spend some time with each other and buy a poetry book or two. Have a good evening.